For almost 4.5 centuries, two major powers just clashed on the Indian subcontinent. It was a relentless fight for land, for control of the seas, and really for the very soul of the Konkan coast. This is the story of that long, bitter rivalry, the Portuguese versus the Marathas.
Now, you might be wondering what makes this explainer different. Well, it's where we're getting our information. We're not just looking at Maratha history books. No, we're actually seeing it through the eyes of their direct rivals. This entire account is built from the intelligence files, the official reports, and the diplomatic cables of the Portuguese themselves. It gives us this really rare and fascinating peek at their most formidable opponent. And right at the heart of this whole conflict is this man, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Just listen to this quote. It's from a Jesuit priest found in the Portuguese archives, and it really sets the stage perfectly. To the Portuguese, Shivaji wasn't just some other local king. He was a force of nature who made all India nervous. He commanded fear, but also a whole lot of grudging respect.
So, where did this all start? Well, funny enough, the first big showdown wasn't on land. It was on the vast, open waters of the Indian Ocean. Both sides knew that whoever controlled the waves controlled the money.
Okay, so in the beginning, the Portuguese had a serious advantage. They totally mastered the seas with this really clever and kind of forceful system called the cartaz. Basically, think of it like a permit. If you wanted to sail your ship and trade, you had to buy a license from the Portuguese and pay their taxes. And for a while, everybody had to play by their rules, from small-time merchants all the way up to the Mughal Empire. But the tides were about to turn, and it happened with incredible speed.
Just look at this timeline. It shows a complete power reversal. In 1659, Shivaji starts building his navy. Fast forward just over 60 years, and suddenly it's the Portuguese ships that need to buy permits just for safe passage. And who from? The Maratha naval commander, Kanjoji Angria. It's an incredible flip. And it happened because the Marathas figured out a new kind of warfare, using smaller, quicker ships to outsmart the big, clunky Portuguese vessels. They just dismantled their control of the sea.
And here's the best part, the real irony in all of this. Who do you think Shivaji hired to build the very navy that would take down the Portuguese? You guessed it, Portuguese shipbuilders and artisans. The Portuguese viceroy got so worried, he desperately tried to get his guys to come back, but it was too late. The architects of Portugal's own sea power had just helped create their biggest rival on the waves.
You know, this whole thing with the Portuguese know-how didn't just stop at the sea. It spilled onto the land, and that's where the fight got even fiercer. A perfect example? The absolutely brutal, years-long battle for Bassine.
Just look at this drawing. It's from the Portuguese archives, and it gives you a real feel for the chaos and raw intensity of these fights. These weren't some distant battles fought by armies miles apart. We're talking brutal, close-quarter sieges for every single fort, every bit of land. This defined their relationship for generations. And the scale of this fighting, it was just immense. The war for the Bassine area alone dragged on for over 2 years. I mean, just think about that. 25 straight months of relentless, grueling warfare that pushed both the Marathas and the Portuguese to their absolute breaking points. And the human cost was just staggering. The Portuguese records themselves estimate that 22,000 Maratha soldiers died just in the Bassine campaign. That one number tells you everything you need to know about how ferocious this conflict was and the incredible price paid for every inch of ground.
So here's where it gets really interesting. There was this huge disconnect between what the Portuguese were saying and what was actually happening. In their official reports, they'd often dismiss the Maratha army as disorganized. But then you read their own battlefield accounts, and they describe these incredibly swift, disciplined attacks that just overwhelmed them time and again. So was it a massive intelligence failure, or maybe just a bit of propaganda to save face against a really, really effective enemy? Okay, so we've covered the fight for the sea and the land, but there was a third, even deeper conflict going on here. It was a clash of ideology, a clash of faiths. The official Portuguese state policy in Goa was guided by this simple, absolute principle, which basically translates to, the religion of the ruler is the religion of the subjects. This led to policies of forced conversions and suppressing local Hindu practices, which, as you can imagine, created a lot of tension and resentment that was always ready to boil over. But this is where looking at the archives is so important, because it helps us clear up some big misconceptions. A lot of people have argued that Shivaji's 1667 invasion of Bardez was payback for religious persecution. But check this out. Contemporary reports, like this one from the English, tell a totally different story. It was actually a strategic military strike against these local chieftains, the Desais, who were using Portuguese Goa as a safe base to launch raids into Maratha territory.
So, when you step back and look at the whole thing, what's the ultimate legacy of this 450-year rivalry? Well, it wasn't simple. It was more like a long, intricate chess match, defined just as much by a kind of grudging respect as it was by all-out war. And maybe nothing captures the Portuguese view better than this. When the governor of Goa heard that Shivaji had died, he didn't just breathe a sigh of relief. He wrote that Shivaji was far more dangerous in times of peace than he ever was in war. I mean, what a statement. That's a stunning admission of respect for his opponent's strategic mind.
And this is how we know their story, not just from grand history books, but from fragile, handwritten documents like this one. This is a Marathi report on Maratha forts, made for the Portuguese viceroy. These old papers, kept safe for centuries in the Goa archives, are literally our direct window into this incredible power struggle.
Which brings us to our final thought. The records of our enemies can often tell us more about ourselves than the histories we write. By seeing this long, bitter conflict through Portuguese eyes, we get a completely different and maybe even a more honest picture of the rise of Maratha power. So it leaves you with a question, right? How does any history change when you read it through the eyes of a rival?